Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the University of the Philippines Cebu's webinar series, another series in the KUAN episode of seminars that has been sponsored by the UP Cebu Teaching and Learning Resource Center as well as the Master of Education program. Good afternoon, maayong pag-abot sa UP even if only virtually. I am Ryan Daniel Dablo. I am a teacher here at UP Cebu High School program and I will be your host this afternoon. And boy, do we have the webinar prepared for you on this day. One of the more exciting things that came with the last century was the internet, which ushered in a new age of information, right? And since then, it has rapidly evolved and has permeated every facet of our existence. It changed the face of the educational and corporate landscapes, and especially the newer generations seem to be so engrossed in it as to be umbilically connected, it seems, right? Since then, it has influenced a large part of our lives, even going so far as to influence politics. It happened in the United States. It also happened in the Philippines a few years back. So there is a more pressing need to augment ourselves with literacy in order to combat whatever it throws our way, chief among them disinformation. So to that end, we have prepared this webinar this afternoon entitled Media Information and Literacy, introducing fact-checking techniques by no less a persona than Miss Annie Perez Gallardo, who hails from the College of Communication Arts and Design here at UP Cebu. In fact, you just witnessed her do her thing in the preview video prior to this start, right? But I'm getting way ahead of myself, so let us have a few moments to acknowledge the guests who are here this afternoon. Allow me to have a brief run through in the chat. We have participants from the National Teachers College, from Assumption College of Nabunturan. I'm sincerely hoping that I'm pronouncing that right. We have from Ifugao State University, Bataan Peninsula State University, Batangas State University. It seems to have two campuses, in fact, right? And from Cebu Technological University. Let's have a quick run through of the other participants from Mabini Educational Institution, Gordon College, UP Baguio, and to all the rest, shout out. Good afternoon and welcome, welcome. We also have people from Albay, Bugo, Foundation University in Dumaguete, Hindang Leyte, Bicol. It seems that this afternoon is a melting pot of participants. So thank you very much for your participation. We'd also like to acknowledge the faculty members from the University of the Philippines, Cebu, who are witnessing the webinar this afternoon, right? Now, before we put on our thinking caps and roll up our sleeves, it's a very good time to refresh ourselves and the reminders that are necessary in order to make sure that the flow this afternoon is as smooth as possible. So to that end, please allow me to call on Ms. Paula from UP Cebu TLRC to review us on reminders in webinar etiquette. Ma'am, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sir Ryan. And to make this learning session as conducive as possible, we would like to remind everyone of some things. So first, this webinar will be recorded, so we'll be keeping tabs of the happenings, the proceedings for documentation purposes. So anyone, you're free to leave if you feel uncomfortable that this session will be recorded. We are also reminding everyone to mute your microphone during the talk, and we want to make sure that the speaker's voice is audible to everyone. So we may also opt to remove you from this Zoom room if you don't follow this request. Another thing is that please refrain from taking pictures or videos of the talk. If you do so, you might be held accountable for some privacy violations if ever that portions of this talk will be leaked into other internet outlets. So we want to protect the identity of everyone and the privacy of everyone. And then another thing is to avoid using the annotation tool. So once it is activated, you might unconsciously swerve your arrow towards the speaker's presentation, and it might distract the speaker and also the participants. And if you have any questions, for sure, there is a very enriching and interesting learning session ahead of us. So if you have any questions while the talk is ongoing, you may put them in our Q&A box in our Zoom panel. And also after the talk, you will have a chance to ask your questions. But at this time, due to our time constraints, we'll only make use of our Q&A box, and we will not allow anyone to unmute during the Q&A. And then, of course, don't forget to evaluate your input for us in order to improve in the things that we do. It is valuable for us so that we can improve even more. And also, if you have answered the form, you will be given a proof of participation. So it will be opened right after the webinar, and it shall remain open for only 10 minutes. And then, so as we are also live in our YouTube channel, TLRC UP Cebu, and for those who are watching via YouTube, you will still get your proof of participation by staying until the end. And we'll also be announcing the instructions at the live chat. So please stay tuned. And then lastly, please follow us for more webinar and training updates. Follow and contact us on these platforms. In Facebook, we have UP Cebu Teaching and Learning Resource Center. In YouTube, we have TLRC UP Cebu. Our website is tlrc.upcebu.edu.ph, and our email at rc.upcebu@up.edu.ph. And that's it for my part. Back to you, Sir Ryan.
Thank you, Ms. Paula, for that concise and comprehensive review, setting the tone nicely for this edifying affair this afternoon, right? So let's get right down to business and go into the meat of this afternoon's event. In order to do that, allow me to call on a very good mentor and friend of mine who is spearheading all efforts towards the technical wizardry that goes behind a webinar such as this, right? So please welcome the head of the TLRC from UP Cebu, Professor Fernand Bernardes, to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Sir Ryan. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today's event. Our speaker, Ms. Annie Fe Perez Gallardo, specializes in broadcasting, multimedia, and journalism courses at the College of Communication, Art, and Design of the University of the Philippines, Cebu. She's also an alumna of the UP Cebu's Communication Program, where she graduated as class valedictorian in 2014. Right after college, she pursued a career as a news operations specialist at ABS-CBN Cebu for 6 years. This paved the way for her to take on multiple roles within the network, such as director, segment producer, and TV news reporter. Today, she remains network's multimedia correspondent, covering Cebu, Negros Oriental, and other areas of Central Visayas. Miss Annie Fe also writes an opinion column entitled Verbal Variety for Cebu's oldest newspaper, which is The Freeman. The column was recently named a finalist for Column of the Year in the Global Media Excellence Awards. As a journalist, she was trained with the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, the Thomson Reuters Foundation, and also the Google News Initiative. She's also a fellow of the Earth Journalism Network, where she has produced multiple in-depth reports on the protection and conservation of Central Visayas environment. Ms. Annie Fe is also part of the UP Diliman's Check.ph, a fact-checking initiative used to combat disinformation during the 2022 elections. She also recently completed her master's degree in journalism at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. Her research interests include broadcast news critics, journalism in new media, and also disinformation. Please help me welcome Ms. Annie Fe Perez Gallardo.
Thank you so much, Sir Nan Bernardes, for that very comprehensive introduction. Thank you also to Miss Paula earlier and to Sir Ryan, of course, who is our moderator for this afternoon. Mayong hapon, magandang araw sa inyong lahat from wherever you are coming from. I am seeing a lot of familiar institutions, universities, and colleges here in the chat box. So thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. So if you are from Cebu or you are in connection with the Department of Education, you would know that we are rather very busy here in our province because we are hosting 6 national events of the Department of Education for the last few days of the outgoing Secretary and Vice President. So it's kind of hectic here, but I'm very thankful that you are here with us, and I hope that we will have a very enriching afternoon as we discuss media information and literacy and fact-checking techniques. Actually, the techniques are rather easy to comprehend and on a basic level. But I hope that somehow you would um, see its importance, even if it's very easy, no, so to speak. So once again, I'm Annie Perez Gallardo, and yes, I used to work full time for ABS-CBN. If you're wondering, I'm the Annie Perez, ABS-CBN News from Cebu. So that's me. Okay, so just for a short overview of what I'm going to discuss this afternoon, hopefully quickly so that we can have more time for Q&A. I know there are a lot of questions that you would want to answer. You would want answers. Maybe we can discuss first what MIL is. For senior high, it is a required subject to teach. And maybe I'll give you an overview what the disinformation battle looks like from the previous elections and until today, and to the leading midterm elections in 2025, and a few fact-checking techniques which I hope you would enjoy and find useful, and we can synthesize everything together, and then we can go to the Q&A. So I hope you are all ready for that. Yes, I was seeing some audio comments on the chat box, so I hope my audio works fine for you now. All right. So basically, this encapsulates the whole discussion this afternoon, that we are to think critically but click wisely. Sometimes the problem of disinformation, or being peddlers of fake news, or being victims of fake news, comes with unconscious clicking or irresponsible clicking. Because on the internet today, everything's so fast. Now you can send a message right away to anybody. Earlier, I was talking with my colleague, and she explained how, because in the media before, where there's no internet yet, they had to send their stories manually through paper, and if the coverage area is far away, they had to send their copy. So that's why there's a thing called copy editing, because that's what they call it, copy sa bus that reaches their office, and the editor picks it up so that they can edit it. So that's how it was before. But right now, it's so easy to do everything you can in any field because of the internet, and of course with the advent of technology. So maybe we can ground ourselves this afternoon with this phrase, by thinking critically and clicking wisely. Now, it's so cliche. A network also had this slogan, think before you click, no, which has been there since maybe even before the advent of social media. But unfortunately, we kind of forget how to do it, or because we do things unconsciously. They say today children in their downtime, no, they are seen having a mannerism of scrolling up even with no devices. So that's also an alarming thing. So we have to ground ourselves that we must think critically and click wisely. So what is media information and literacy, no? So it's an intersection of information and communication technologies. So based on the video that you just saw earlier, so it's like a highway. So there's an information highway, and the vehicles are the different platforms that we use to access information. So it could be the internet, it could be social media, different platforms on social media. It could be the traditional mainstream media, TV, internet, and the newspaper. And all of them are in an information highway. So, depende kung saan maaring makisakay ang tao. No? Because there are a lot of choices, and the highway is so wide. But somehow we need to find a way to man that traffic, no? Na walang mabangga, walang pumasok sa mga no entry, all the signages are followed, all the rules, and all things ethical will be followed. So again, media information and literacy is an intersection of information and communication technologies, and it has become today an avenue for self-expression. So even us educators, we have a persona on the internet, and in those persona or profiles, we are able to show the public or students or whoever are potential people that will deal with kung ano yung mga gusto natin, what are our favorite things to do, where have we been, where are we traveling to, and so on. Okay, so because we are in a democracy as well, so we are entitled to self-expression, and that is one platform for it. It's also an avenue for lifelong learning. Hindi naman lahat na nasa internet ay mga memes at nakakatawa lang. But you can also learn a lot of things, no? Because you can self-express, you can also be creative. Not just visual art, but you can be creative in writing your posts, your captions, your copies there. You can create a dialogue. The comment section in almost all platforms today allows for a healthy exchange of dialogue, and not just dialogue with different persons, but even cultural exchange. Right now, it's so easy to reach out and be in connection with other individuals in other parts of the globe because of how technology is allowing that. No? Yung dati nating mga kamag-anak na nasa ibang bansa, nag-OFW or kaya nag-migrate sa ibang bansa, we are able to talk to them even with a video, no? So it feels like they are just there. So these are some of the avenues for the intersection of communication and technology. But like I mentioned, we need people like this, no? Si Kuya Sir. Kailangan natin ng mga Kuya Sir na ayun. Kailangan natin ng mga Kuya Sir na magmaman ng traffic, no? These people will redirect us to where we should go, what we should not consume, how we should consume them. And of course, the heaviest right now is if it's real or not, no? And as educators, we are duty bound to take on this role of being the enforcers of that information highway. Because the students now are digital natives, everything is so vast to them. So it's our responsibility to make sure that everything that they consume and they're able to consume it in a way that does not do any harm to them. Okay. Importante ang MIL to citizens because it allows them to differentiate information from other content and assess content providers. Because there are some that post themselves as real. No, there's an issue of inauthenticity in media. It also allows the students or yung mga kabataan ngayon to make informed decisions because it works both ways, no? Media influences a citizenry. It also allows for information verification through research, and it builds a sense of community based on shared facts and rights respective narratives. It also maintains a public discourse, like I mentioned, because we can make a dialogue and discussion online. And it critically participates in the life cycle of information and other content. So in a nutshell, it is very important, it is helpful, it is to our advantage. But of course, there's the issue of similarity. Not similarity index, plagiarism kind of issues, maybe. But similarity in a sense that you might not be able to distinguish the real from fake, no? There's a new trend on TikTok right now. Because my students, they're into this thing. There's this new trend called real or fake. So they're trying to distinguish what's real or fake. So it's also like that, no? If the you see the picture on the screen, they are all apples. Now, if you try to read between that line, that fact that they're all apples, correct, but they're not all the same. There's one that's different. There's one that's posing as the same. And that poser, so to speak, could be a source of disinformation or content that could damage our mindset or change our mindset and allow us to think otherwise than the truth. And it's also so difficult because they say that truth is absolute. There's really no one truth, but we want to be biased to the truth where it is all recorded. So dun po tayo. So the disinformation battle today goes beyond created videos or yung mga reels na gawa. Because there's an issue of similarity, even one's identity could be copied. So if you are familiar
Hello
with
everyone, magandang buhay po sa inyong lahat. Ngayong araw po ay pag-uusapan po natin kung ano ang pinakamabisang gamot para sa mga sakit sa atay, apdo at lapay.
Okay, so that's an example of deep fake. The person that you see is Miss Cheryl Cosim from TV5. It sounds like her. It's literally her voice. It looks like she's saying it, but it's actually a deep fake video. So the technology now could actually replicate you and your identity to make it look similar to what is real. But actually, she did not say this. There is no endorsement of some kind of any kind of medicine. And these are what the detractors are trying to do now, taking on the identity of others for their own agenda, for their own propaganda. So again, if you, I'll let you listen to it.
Kung may sakit po kayo sa liver, gallbladder at pancreas, minor man or malala na, well, ito po ang #1 recommended ng ating mga doktor at experts, LiveSure Natural Herbals, at more reviews and testimonies at marami na po ang sumubok sa gamot na ito. Sila po ang nagpapatunay na itong gamot na ito ay epektibo. Ang supplement na ito ay nagpapagaling ng mga sakit sa atay, from liver cirrhosis to liver cancer, pancreatitis to pancreatic cancer at bato sa gallbladder. Hindi na kailangan operahan dahil in short time, LiveSure can help you recover sa mga sakit sa liver at pancreas. Ating pong tunghayan ang mga testimonies on how LiveSure helped them sa kanilang mga nararamdaman.
Yes naman.
Okay, so it really looks real, no? Even the movement of the mouth looks like it's really her. So aside from deep fake, we also have people who are trying to fish you or scam you. Maybe you have seen this, no? Lalo na doon sa mga government employees, government teachers, na may account sa Land Bank. Land Bank says, Anya, that there is a scholarship for all students. Tas may grant pa na 10,000 monthly for college and so on. Excuse me. You only have to submit your report card, your public, your PSA birth certificate, and then they want you to fill out a form in a bit.ly link. Now, it really looks real. Tapos yung Facebook page is entitled Philippine Government Update. Looks real. Looks very similar. So that's how intense, no? Sa Filipino pa, lala ang disinformation battle because they are close enough to the real thing. Okay? We define disinformation as false information which has the intent to mislead. Okay, like the examples that we saw earlier, it has a propaganda, it has a purpose, either by an institution, could be the government, could be individuals. They have the intent to their advantage. So like the example earlier of deep fake, they want to sell. They're using the identity of other people because they want to gain profit out of it. No, it all boils down to that. Even the land bank photo, they might or they will, I'm pretty sure they will, tap into your accounts until you bleed dry of it because they also want something from you. Now, the Philippines has been dubbed as patient zero in the global disinformation epidemic, according to a Facebook or Meta executive during the 2016 Philippine elections. Now that's more than 6 years, more or less 8 years. So that was the time when Facebook was already a thing. You can campaign now on Facebook. That was the time of when Rodrigo Duterte ran for president. And the situation worsened after the war on drugs, the narratives that were sent there, the midterm elections in 2019, and the 2022 elections, national elections. And then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. So I got this from a study of KUAN and KUA from UP Diliman. And they studied what were the types of disinformation narratives that were proliferating on social media for our country, because they studied Southeast Asia. So just to give you an overview how it really looks like. No? Some of the topics included COVID-19, the drug war, politics and elections, history, historical revisionism, changing narratives about personalities like the Aquinos and etc. And also mudslinging against opposition leaders. These are more prominent not on traditional platforms but on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. And these are where some of our younger generation are on mostly. And to our surprise as well, the older generation. I think by now you would relate that some of our lolos, and lolas, our titos and titas, are asking us for assistance, no, on how to navigate their Facebook and other platforms. And they too, I was on my way to a trip in Manila. I was in the airport, and I was annoyed by a very loud parang TikTok reel. And then when I looked around to see who that person was, na sobrang lakas ng volume ng phone niya, was an elderly lady. So to my surprise, she's also on TikTok. So the audience is getting wider in these platforms. So wag nyong ismulin. Nasa internet lang yan. No, everybody is going there. Okay, more lenses of the disinformation battle. There are a lot of common narratives that are still present today, and maybe you have heard of it. The golden era, the first Marcos administration, despite records and published accounts and first-hand witnesses of what happened, there are still a lot of content proliferating that was a golden era. And they also have their own argument why. And the concept of unity, especially during the 2022 elections, no? Which is very contradicting to what is happening today between the leading members of the unity. And we also heard this during the pandemic, that the vaccine is a devil's work, or that you will be part of Satan's army because there is a code or a number corresponding to your vial, etc. Or that you will turn into a zombie when you get vaccinated. So that's why a lot of content proliferating saying that please do not get your vaccines for COVID-19, or that vaccines will insert a microchip into your body and they'll be able to track you, or like another country or another nationality will be able to see what you're doing, or they will be able to control you, and those kind of things, no? And it's scary because these information, like sample vaccination, they are backed up by science and research, which are heavily studied. So why do we believe? Okay. And this is also medyo data heavy lang siya. This is how the internet and social media penetrates in the Southeast Asia region. This is still from KUAN and KUA in 2023, which they also sourced from a report from We Are Social Country. So if you can look at the Philippines, we are over 100 million in 2022, but our internet penetration in percentage is 91%. So the remaining 9% may be those in far-flung communities and with little access or little to no access of the internet. By the millions, there are 56.4 million people who have access to mobile phones and smartphones. For social media penetration, we are at about 82%. So that's a lot of people who could be exposed to these false narratives. And this is the traffic share of popular social media platforms in Southeast Asia. I think I pasted the same table. But it's more or less like the first one, where we are at a high number when it comes to using social media and platforms and the internet. So I wanted to show how it really looks like, the disinformation battle, vis-a-vis the amount of exposure that the Filipinos are exposed to these kinds of platforms. So there are a lot of responses not to disinformation. UNESCO has acknowledged this as a problem. There's a study also by FLEMS and by SWS and by the Philippine Statistics Authority on literacy and exposure to fake news. And a lot of individuals are already acknowledging that this problem is already getting worse every day. So UNESCO has suggested 4 general classifications in response to disinformation. One is prevention. So that's countering disinformation by helping audiences discern reliable sources of information, or identifying and promoting trusted media sources, tools and training programs for educators. So if you can see fact checks by some media outlets, that's their role in debunking these false narratives. So one example is Verifiles. So Verifiles used to be part of the Philippine Center of Investigative Journalism, and some of them made their own outlet, and one of their thrust today is to do constant fact checks. So they scour the internet when there are false narratives, and they fact check it. So when an institution fact checks, they first make sure where the source comes from, and if there are published information or news about it, they explain it in a way that it's easier to digest for the public. We also have identification and monitoring. So these are initiatives that uncover disinformation articles and their sources in the various media and social media channels to alert public to their existence and provide truthful information. So one example also is it's not loading, but comics by a Abacada Academia Contra Disinformation. So they create comics that aid in debunking these false narratives. Another response of UNESCO is to contextualize and correct. And in this respond, the institution or a group goes beyond identification and focuses on inoculating the public against the messages, including directing audience to the correct source of information. So they suggest which sources they can go to make sure that they are exposed to what is true. Regulation or non-regulation, pwedeng for private sector efforts, and it refers to self and co-regulation. So in an attempt to stop and hinder disinformation. Okay, so these are what the individuals in the institution or the media are doing now to help, no? But sometimes, because the battle is so wide and deep, and the warriors are fewer, their efforts sometimes do not push through. Okay? Sometimes nananalo pa din yung kabila. And according to study by Ong, it's an architect network yung nagpapakalat ng fake news. So, he didn't disclose it. Ong didn't disclose it, but they work in a PR marketing firm of some sort. They have computers in one floor in one of the offices in one of the highly urbanized cities in the country, and they are very organized. So that in itself is something that is also hard to dispel. So we also have to make our own efforts. So paano ba? Fact-checking techniques, I cannot put it simply, but you must master the art of being cynical. So when you say cynical, it's when you question, you don't believe right away, really? Where? Like that, no? Ganun. Being cynical allows you to think twice rather than believing right away. So I'll share with you a personal conversation I had with my friends, a very recent incident. So for context, yesterday, Cebu City, as host of the Palarong Pambansa, opened the whole competition yesterday, right? And the city announced that they invited the president, Bongbong Marcos Jr., and the vice president, Sara Duterte, who are not in good terms right now, okay? If you are not updated with that. So the unit team is not really in good terms right now. Last June 29, Sara Duterte was here in Cebu, and we talked to her, and she said, yes, I am going to the opening of the Palarong Pambansa. This, even if she knows that the president's also coming. So yesterday, one of my friends said that no VP Sara daw sa palaro. Good morning. That's the gray one. And that's me in blue, being cynical. Sure, oy, no? Sa mga Bisaya pa, hoy, pag sure. Are you sure? Sure ka ba? And then I said, kinsay ingon? Who said? Because I'm cynical, I don't believe, I don't accept. And then another one of my friends said, hala, mauna na ron. Ayan na nga. And then that friend dropped a name of a person who is a department head of Cebu City. And my reaction is just, weh, because I didn't believe. What did I do? Did I really believe my friend because we're friends? No, this is just a life story, but fact-checking related. What I did was to ask the Department of Education, her staff that handles events, and the question was thrown back to me. Ma'am Annie, sino ba nagsabi na wala si VP? And then she replied to me saying that there is no information from their end that the VP is not attending. So at that time, that was the truth. So ang na-receive namin na information was not true. We only confirmed it later on when we saw the program, and the photo is not loading, but we saw the program around 4 p.m. that her part was crushed out because she did not attend. Okay, so I'm just giving you an example, an overview of how to be cynical, the mastering the art of being cynical. Pero there's also what we call the SIFT method, no? SIFT, SIFT, Sierra India Foxtrot Tango, SIFT method. Okay, so una is you have to stop, no? Wait muna. Check in with yourself. Do I really believe this? Am I just carried away from this information because I'm too close to it, because I know a lot about it, or because I'm biased to it? So stop, okay? And when you are conscious that you have stopped, then you investigate. I investigate. Investigate the source. No, kasi sino nagsabi? Who said? Know what you're reading before you read it. No? If you understand. Who wrote it? Who said? When was it written? Baka it was said or was posted years ago and could be the same context, but it's already old. Investigate. F, so we have stop, investigate. Then F is find. Find better coverage. Look for trusted reporting or analysis on the claim. Now, if a name was dropped, that person said it, who else could verify it? You look for other sources who can corroborate that claim or that fact. And what did they say about it? T, so you have stop, investigate, find better coverage, and T is to trace. No, trace claims, quotes, and media, because the media also reports, right? So you can always cross check with them for the original context, and you determine whether the information was taken out of context, baka, or it's really not true at all. And you seek to reconstructualize the information so you can better understand the validity and intent. Okay. So actually nearing the end. So let's do a bit of an exercise. Okay. Sige. You all see this photo, right? So it's a photo with a yellow-green striking background with the logo of the National Labor Relations Commission, NLRC. That's an attached agency to the Department of Labor and Employment. So it says, may dole tupad job hiring daw. So tupad is also a government program for the underprivileged. And 800 pesos per day ang offer. Wow, more than the minimum wage. Of course, it comes with a description, ganun. Okay, so we apply the SIFT method. So we stop. Really? They're giving out 800 pesos per day for tupad beneficiaries? Investigate. Who posted it? F. Find better coverage. Did the Department of Labor and Employment really announce it? As in? And then T, did the media report it? Or baka wala lang? Okay? So when we ask, we stop, we ask really, and then I investigate. Who posted it? So it's okay. It's not loading, but if you can see the photo, it's posted by a certain Juliet Llanos Amanderson. Okay, and the caption says reposted. It's just not loading. Okay, so you read the fine prints, no, and the details. A pro tip: poor layout is almost always not true. Okay, not to belittle those who have little to no skill with graphics design, but sometimes always, they're really not true. Okay, and if you look at the official page of the Department of Labor and Employment, there's a verification check. So that's also one pro tip. Look for sources that are verified. Okay, but that's also tricky now since Meta and other platforms are giving verification check marks with a fee. So if you pay them, they give you a verification check mark. So double check if it's really the official page. There's also one layout that's not loading, but it's supposedly an example of how Dole layouts their artwork, but it's not showing here on the screen. Some pointers that you can look for: there's a logo of the agency. And right now, the government is also implementing this new thing, placing the Bagong Pilipinas logo in all of their collaterals. And then they are beautifully layouted and clear so that its intended audience could easily understand. Okay, so when all else fails, you can always ask. And I learned this from my former news chief. When in doubt, ask. Okay, never assume. If you are really unsure, if it doesn't show on your research, you can always call your nearest Dole office or the nearest individual that can confirm that information to you. You can also do this. This is one of my favorite things to do when I'm not sure if it's real. You can do a reverse image search. One of my favorite websites is tineye.com. So if you want to explore that, it's a portal where you can upload an image. It's like a search engine for images, and then it shows you where that image is also shown elsewhere on the internet. Um, you can also use Google Lens or Google Images. It has the same feature. So it's also not showing it's a broken link, but if you do a reverse image search of the example that I'm showing, it would lead you to other images with a label that the photo is fake. So that's already a wake-up call for you that is not true. So do a reverse image search. And then watch out for the following words. No, watch out how words are used in the posts. They might be either poorly structured or overly structured. Pag overly structured, then you know that it's being done with the aid of AI. So it's also too good to believe. And then context. It might be used for propaganda at this point in time, especially that the elections is nearing. And then watch out for proof. Is there any other proof that you can see? For example, on a video post giving false narratives, is there other proof that can debunk? And then timing. Watch out for the timing. It could be na pinost because the other part, aggrieved party, or because the elections are nearing, those kind of things. These would be helpful to make sure that you are double checking the information that you are receiving. Ayaw niya talaga mag-load. But I've come to my last slide, and if you ever forget everything I have said, all the techniques that I just taught, the sift and all the other pro tips, maybe if there's one point that you would not forget this afternoon, maybe it's to understand and realize that when it's too good to be true, don't believe. Otherwise, then you do your fact checking. If it's confirmed, then yes, it's true. But if it's really unimaginable or impossible to be true, then don't believe. A cynical person is better than a gullible one, and that would deter you from falling into, because I'd like to call the disinformation a vortex, because it goes on very deep. Now, once you believe one thing, it's already hard to go back to the truth. And that's how some of us were maybe during the elections. Maybe at this point, we can go back to this adage that when it's too good to be true, don't believe. And that ends my presentation. So if you have other questions beyond our time, you can reach out to my email, and I'm also on social media. That's my Facebook page and my Twitter, formerly X account. So thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Miss Annie, for the talk, Mom. Can we give a virtual round of applause to our speaker for being brave about addressing something that is, very pervasive, very, very relevant. I would just like a few moments to review the content of the talk so that Miss Annie has a brief resting period before she faces your questions. Okay. The major takeaways I had was one of the most splendid metaphors in trying to compare media and information literacy to a highway and traffic scenario, and I can only imagine how that is informed by the traffic scenario here in the Philippines, Miss Annie, right? It might be a very appropriate metaphor. She also went in to mention about the issues plaguing media literacy, as well as what initiatives are being done by the media, right? And one thing that came to mind was one of the statements by Maria Ressa when she addressed the Harvard graduating class this year. Her final piece of talk was, she said to the graduates, "Welcome to the battlefield," to indicate that It's the real world now. And, we're thrust into this disinformation war, as Miss Annie mentioned. She also mentioned the techniques that we can apply in order to fact check, which included being cynical, the SIFT method. And I particularly was taken by the focus on looking at poor layouts, poor structures, or even structured posts that are structured really well. Because as teachers, we know the dangers of AI technology this time. We often have a sixth sense about determining whether something is false because it's too good to be true, right? And also that tip about reverse image searches, those are really helpful to fish out scams and something that isn't truthful in the net. So thank you very much, Miss Annie, for the talk. And I believe we will now address the questions that our audience have for Miss Annie. So, Sir Nand, do we go through all of the questions? There are 7 I'm looking at right now. Do I address each one at a time? Correct, sir? Or Miss Paula? Do we address each one at a time, ma'am? Do we have your go signal? So I believe we'll start with this one, Miss Annie. This is a question from Grecian Carl Hudilia. Since one of the avenues of media information literacy is self-expression, what can you say about the news that was watched on GMA that protesters are not allowed to wear protest clothing and they might get arrested if caught on the upcoming SONA of President Marcos, which will lessen the freedom of speech or self-expression of the protesters?
Okay, thank you so much for that question, Grecian Carl. Um, for one, okay, for one, how do we define protest clothing? And for two, who said that it's not allowed? Is it the PNP or is it the PSG? But I'm not so sure how this is related to my topic, but my personal stand on this is that we are bound by the Constitution to our freedom of expression, but there are certain avenues where we can express them. Um, I'm guessing that they are putting limitations and restrictions to the SONA venue, and because that's how it is when there are presidential visits and other officials. No? Like for the past 3 days, we have been so immersed with lockdowns. No, for context, when the president and vice president is visiting, all invited guests should be there an hour or two before, or else you would not be allowed to get inside. So there are protocols that they have to follow. So for this, if they are implementing a restriction on clothing, even outside or far from the SONA venue, then I think that is very unconstitutional. It goes against our freedom of self-expression.
Thank you, Miss Annie. If there are any rejoinders from the audience, you can just comment and we'd be happy to read it later, right? The other question, this one from Lester Kyle Paez, what can the social media giants and government sectors do to stop the disinformation fluctuating in their platforms? Because it seems like the current practices by government sectors is in mitigating disinformation aren't effective.
Good. Hi, Dr. Kyle. So si Kyle, no, is a colleague. He is a film professor at Cebu Normal University. So sharing from my experience with Check.ph during the 2022 election. So Check is a collaborative arm, parang shepherding all the institutions, academe, civic sector, and those who are involved in fact checking and bringing out the truth, right? So, si fact check tried to talk to these SOCME giants, specifically Meta. And so Meta runs Facebook and Instagram and Google, because Google also runs YouTube. So there were a lot of discussions so that they would eventually update, upgrade, and implement new measures on their community standards. They already took action a bit. No, they eradicated some pages that they were mass reported or were believed to be peddlers of fake news. However, because the model also of their platform does not stop individuals from creating more, so they delete and then they create again. So it's a problem that they are yet to address. Sa government sectors naman, to be honest, I really don't see it as a priority, especially when it comes to ICT, because we're not there yet. There are a lot of things that the government is focusing on. But what can they do is to again go back to those dialogues that were done for the 2022 national elections and maybe add more issues like the issue right now on artificial intelligence, like what you saw earlier, sa deep fake, so that they can address that more concretely in time for the next elections as well.
Thank you, Miss Annie. The next one is a hot take for Miss Annie. Is Rappler a credible source of information? It is popular, but is it necessarily credible since its management and writers have hard positions on issues?
Yeah. Well, it's also like you're saying that ABS-CBN is a bias-CBN, right? But I'm really not in the position to judge if a media outlet is credible or not. And that's where media literacy comes in, no? Because you are now evaluating the different media outlets and their information that they are putting out. But what I can say is this, because Rappler has established its legitimacy. It is not clothing itself in anonymity. And they're also on the ground working, going on field to to gather the news. So if you and for all the participants here in this room feel like Rappler is not credible or any media outlet, you feel like you're offended or you feel like they lack in context or in depth, there are still other media platforms that you can go to validate that information. We are so blessed because we are in a democracy, and there's a provision on the freedom of the press, although it's not 100% free. But because of that provision, marami ang mga avenues na pwede nating puntahan to verify information sa news. So, hindi lang Rappler. So, if you feel like it's not credible for you, then you can go to state media kung gusto nyo doon. PTV, PNA, IBC, pwede doon. Pwede din sa mga legacy media, these big names, GMA, ABS, TV5. There are so many, and even the community press, they're doing their best to put out information for the public. So, me, I don't stick to one. Just to share, maybe there are students here as well. My morning routine is always to go to Press Reader because we have access to Press Reader. Thank you, UP. And then I look at all the local media papers there, no? Because there are also differences. It's true. No, I won't lie. Iba-iba ang slant and biases ng mga publications and media outlets. So as a person now who is media literate, you have the choice to go to different avenues.
Thank you, Miss Annie, right? That was also a re-echoing of the sentiments of the SIFT method that you mentioned earlier, Miss. Another question from Angelina Gano. We have an FB page entitled Ifugao Cyberspace Watchdog, which is a tool for educational campaign and spreading updates. But now it has become a hub for rants of various individuals putting someone's name or reputation in vain through negative comments. How effective are current community moderation efforts in mitigating harmful content? I guess we can expand this to just the general cyberspace.
Yeah, thank you so much, no, Angelina. When you say community moderation efforts, do you mean the platform itself or the netizens? Because the platform is algorithm heavy. Okay, there are people behind it, but because it's algorithm heavy and they are loaded with a lot of profiles and etc., these things they do not see. I talked to the regional anti-crime unit now because I also had a thing with them, and they told me that they are not so keen on going after these pages that are harming or one's name, maligning one's persona. They are more active, or it's easy for them to go after those who are posting about threats to national security and child pornography or child selling. So mga personal is so hard to um for them to go against it. Now, the beauty of the democracy in cyberspace, the community, if the community acknowledges that this is a platform for propaganda, then you can actually turn the landscape and the mindset around by debunking whatever they are posting and then resharing that. So, and maybe not giving them an avenue as well. No, because you understand on social media, the more you share, the more you comment on their content, it amps up their data, technically, and it's giving them more traction. So if you can just debunk and then let them be, and then they will also have a natural death, so to speak.
Thank you, Miss Annie. Prior to reading this next question, I'd like to point out that it is really nice that you refreshed in our memories the most explosive episodes in the past, particularly the COVID vaccination season, the 2022 elections, because that was just an exasperating time. A lot of posts on social media just flew in the face of logic and science. So, a question to that effect: during the 2022 national elections, media distrust surged among Filipinos. What steps can be taken now to restore the trust in media?
Actually, that's so tricky, and institutions, especially the academe, right now are also working to get back that trust. How do I put it? Because there are a lot of key individuals in the administration that tried to smear the media, which um, allowed the people to also believe these leaders. So they're put in bad light, no? Plus what happened to the shutdown and everything else, and the freedom on social media. And people feel like they don't need the news because it's not making them feel better. Mas lalo silang na-stress. And they would rather go for content that would make them laugh, or mga how-tos, no? Saan ba bagong kainan, etc., etc. What I can see now, because we have acknowledged this media distrust, is to revolutionize the way we tell stories. Paano? The way of storytelling now is not too hard to intellectual, although meron pa rin ganon for that type of group. But the media outlets now are trying to go into how media or content is being consumed by producing reels, by producing infographics, short videos. It could be a different approach and an experimental stage at this point, but it's a very beautiful way to enter your FYPs and your algorithms and hopefully gain back that trust. No, media is trying to soften, no, na hindi siya masyadong too intimidating by creating more humanizing stories and then attaching them to public policies and all the development that we have now with our government.
Thank you, Ms. Annie. The next question is about what should we do if an official page of a government agency is unexpectedly hacked and the hackers posted something that has malicious intent? In case you were just innocently browsing through the internet, how do you know that that post is true?
Okay, so if a hacker takes over a page, you would know because the website changes. It's not the same. And one SOP, standard operating procedure, is if it collects your personal data and if it also asks for a number or an OTP, then you wouldn't really give it out. Okay. And government agencies are also very quick now to post and announce if they have been hacked. One key thing also that I learned is to always check the URL if it has not changed. And if there's anything weird that you notice, then the best recourse would be to close your browser, get on social media, check the official page of the agency to make sure that none of your information or accounts were compromised.
I would like to also add, Miss Annie, the latter part of your talk was especially helpful towards this, being on the receiving end of scams myself. It happened once or twice. The pointers that you mentioned at the later part of your speech were especially helpful in being vigilant about this. So I think we're down to the final 4 questions, ma'am. The next one is a question on semantics. Should we really need to be cynical rather than skeptical? Because cynical is it clouds judgment with negativity, while being skeptical is not being easily convinced. So please clarify, ma'am.
Yeah, actually, I was reading this question earlier, no? Well, being skeptical is okay, but for me, I'd like to amp up that level of being skeptical because when you're skeptic, it's more of like you're just asking questions. But cynical, you're already building that wall, that kind of defense that it could not be true. Maybe because I have trust issues. No, maybe because I'm really on the lookout for these kinds of things. And for me, being skeptical is not enough. But of course, you are free to become skeptical if that helps you more than being cynical. I'd like to presume that everybody has their own agenda. So I remember this Jackie Chan movie na he always says, trust nobody. So I think I'm at that level when it comes to consuming information or being faced with this false narratives.
So let's go for healthy cynicism. Right, Miss No. I think we can join the final 2 questions, but the second to the last one, Miss Annie, how can we advocate for responsible media information consumption when some media personas are peddling fake news and casting doubt to social media as a whole?
Sino sila? Charot. um, we can advocate for responsible media information consumption when we have mastered media information and literacy. Again, because we're in a democracy, we have a lot of choices. Where to go, who to watch, who to follow. Some media personas, it would be also helpful if you check their background, who they are involved with, or who owns their company. And I did a study on a religion-based media outlet that I'm not dropping, but there are only a few, so you might know. And that helps also because kung sino yung may-ari could also have a possible agenda kaya nagpe-peddle ng fake news or nagsispread ng mga false narratives because the owner itself is in cahoots with a politician. So, kaya baka nagagamit yung mga personas nila. So, it would always be worth it if you could also look beyond the screen. Go to media ownership. But that's a different, different story. But it's really very helpful if you also know, and that's also part of MIL actually, knowing who owns and controls the media. So, baka si owner is a conglomerate, has utang na loob ni ganito ganyan, and that could be the reason why they are not as credible as they are. And that's sad, and that's the reality. So be critical, like I mentioned in the first slide, about who you are watching and who you are following on media.
Thank you, Ms. Annie. Now, you mentioned earlier that even the elderly are not exempt from this disinformation war. So we have two related questions. The first one from Alpheus is, how can we educate or instruct those in the older generations? And then a related question from Ms. Edmel Cabugos is, are there programs that help or teach the older generations on literacy, because they're the usual victims of disinformation in this case?
Reading Miss Edmil's question gave me a light bulb that maybe the efforts right now for MIL should not be just for the younger generation, but also to this age group. And it's possible, I think, that we can create materials for them. UP Diliman's College of Mass Communication, they're producing video series featuring media personalities on MIL. But the audience is rather targeted to students, especially senior high. Maybe we can suggest to these personalities as well, or yung mga media institutions, legacy media, to create materials, or even the academe could reach out to this sector, or siguro si LGU, si OSCA, we can engage them to create tailored fit na mga materials for this age group. And because there's a psychology behind it, di ba? Yung mga medyo thunders na, they easily get irked when you teach them or when you correct them. And sometimes, and I know this for a fact, during the elections, a lot of younger generations lost respect or were in a fight with their parents or their grandparents because of these technology and disinformation issues. I used to tell them during that time that it's better to lose the argument and keep the relationship. But you can always get past through that veil ng age gap if you just take it slow and steady.
Thank you, Miss Annie. We have exhausted the questions in that box, but we have one more in the regular chat, Miss Annie. We'd just like to acknowledge Professor Mia Mateo from CCAD. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, ma'am, and all the other teachers from UP Cebu. With the upcoming elections, this is from Professor Mia. Next year, what are some of your practical recommendations to voters who are all prone to disinformation and misinformation?
All right, sige. So the election next year is very colorful and very exciting. To give you an overview for the national scope, no, sa mga senators, there's already a shift. No? You see, we have a new Senate president. The Uniteam is not the Uniteam as it is. For the local side as well, if you are from Cebu, there are a lot of things going on, especially with the city. It would be helpful if you use every avenue that you can, where you can hear these candidates when they speak. And you read up on news and information about them, so that you're able to weigh which ones are more fit to lead than the other. When you are faced with content that may be doubtful or could be fake, I believe these individuals, they have their verified accounts, which you can always go and double check too. For me, the most important is to go beyond personalities, but to look at individuals who have clear and concrete platforms, who can continue the next half of this administration. So it's so crucial. I'd rather you go for debates, discussions, fora, than mga short clips or self-produced na mga videos, because they have their agenda. So be open to it. No? If you really have that love and malasakit for your country, then you would choose well beyond who has the most likes and shares, or who has the best profile picture, banner, etc., etc. We must aim for a well-informed citizenry by choosing platform-based leaders.
And on that note, I think everybody would like to share this moment to thank Miss Annie for allowing us to pick apart the rich contents of her mind. Thank you so much, Mom, for sharing your expertise and your advocacy. So to present the certificate for Miss Annie Perez Gallardo, allow me to call on the TLRC coordinator, Professor Fernand Bernardes. Sir, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sir Ryan. Thank you, Miss Annie, for an insightful and also informative session this afternoon. On behalf of the UP Cebu Teaching and Learning Resource Center and also the UP Cebu Master of Education program, we extend our heartfelt gratitude and congratulations for this successful event. So, as what you can see right now on the screen is showing the certificate of appreciation is awarded to Miss Anfe Perez Gallardo for sharing her invaluable time and expertise as speaker in the webinar on media information and literacy, introducing fact-checking techniques, given this 10th day of July 2024 at the University of the Philippines, Cebu, signed by yours truly and also Professor Kim P. Bundok, our MEd program coordinator. Once again, Miss Annie, thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you very much as well.
Congratulations again, Ms. Annie. Thank you, Sir Nand. At this juncture, we will now be reviewing the evaluation mechanics for the seminar. You will see it on your screen, ladies and gentlemen. There is a link there that you can utilize. And please make sure to use the correct format and spelling of your name for your e-certificate, and make sure that you also provide the correct email address. You may also use the link to allow us to send a copy of your responses back to you. This will be live for, I believe, 10 minutes only upon the end of this webinar, if my information is correct. So kindly do so now. The QR code will take you to the evaluation link. Right. There are also additional questions in the chat, but we do not have the time to address them anymore. Sir Nant, please tell us if there is a way for the audience to continue the discourse, allow them to comment in the social media areas of TLRC, as well as, perhaps ask additional questions to Miss Annie if they are so inclined.
We can always collate all the questions from our participants through email, and we may also be asking them to be answered by Miss Annie. I also think that Miss Annie also posted her social media account earlier and also her UP email address.
Truly, truly. Thank you very much, sir, because this is a highly contentious issue, one that's very relevant and relatable. So that explains the interest of our viewers. Thank you very much. So I believe, Sir Nan, this is the area where we will have a photo opportunity with our speaker as well as the participants, right?